Working Cows Podcast, episode 370. This episode is brought to you by Farming Without the Bank.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios. And this episode is brought to you by Farming Without the Bank. There are 3 guarantees. None of you are farming like you did 100 years ago. Why are you financing it like you did 100 years ago? The biggest part of your operation is the money that runs through your hands, and you let someone else control that. The bank gets the final say in what you get money for and when you pay it back. For many, this is a great relationship. None of you are farming like you did 100 years ago. Why are you financing it like you did 100 years ago? The biggest part of your operation is the money that runs through your hands, and you let someone else control that. The bank gets the final say in what you get money for and when you pay it back. For many, this is a great relationship, until it's not. Farming Without the Bank shows you how you can take back the control of your money so that you can make the bank plan B instead of plan A. This is done by you creating your own banking system you own and control. To learn more, tune in to the Farming Without the Bank podcast and go to farmingwithoutthebank.com to get the book. Once you've read the book, Mary Jo will meet with you one-on-one and help you determine where and how to get started. She'll most likely also touch on some estate transition ideas, financing ideas, business growth or startup ideas, and many other things she has experience with from helping thousands of farmers and ranchers like you. So go to farmingwithoutthebank.com today to get the book and subscribe to the Farming Without the Bank podcast now. Very excited to be joined today by Harry Cope. Harry is in Central Missouri. And Central Missouri presents its own unique set of challenges. Every area has its unique advantage, its unfair advantage, and its unique challenges. And Harry is in Central Missouri that has the unique challenge of mud in the winter and some of those things, just winter feeding, ice, and those issues that they deal with there kind of at a unique level to other places in the country. And so we're going to talk to Harry about his grazing of standing Milo as his strategy for winter feeding and the difference that that's been making on his operation over the last few years. So, Harry, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a listener reach out and said, this is the guy you should talk to. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. And one of the things that mentioned in the kind of preparation, getting started here was kind of how you guys handle winter grazing and how you handle just the winter feeding and some of those things. So can you tell me a little bit about where you're at, first of all, and then the challenges that come along with the winter in your part of the world?
Okay. We're dead in the center of Missouri, basically right between St. Louis and Columbia, right off I-70. So the winter feed costs are the big bear for all of us. I mean, especially here. Usually the big challenges that we run into in winter is we don't get your guys' version of snow, but we get snow, we'll get ice, and we'll get mud. And sometimes we get all 3 at the same instant. And that's what makes life fun. But we've come from feeding a lot of hay we went from almost 150 days worth of hay feeding to now we've got it dialed down. And our goal is to keep it down to 30 days or less. We do feed hay. I mean, there's certain situations it makes sense to feed hay. We've tried being a purist and grazing all the way through it. That leads to frozen fingers and a few other things I don't like. So, when it gets really bad, we'll change off of it. But the system that I don't know where we got it from or how we've done it, but myself and a neighbor, Bob Ridgely, we've been doing this for about 28 years now. We've been grazing standing whole Milo, a grain crop grown in the field, left there. And we graze it. And what that does by doing that, in essence, what it is if you figure up all your costs from the time you start planting a crop till you get through growing, harvesting, hauling, manure handling, everything else, all the way back ready to go again next year. If you will stop spending money at planting, which is what we do, you're at 60% of your cost. And so that lets us basically take our wintering costs almost, I mean, if it's costing a guy $3 a day for a cow with hay, which was last year, normally it's in that $1.75 to $2 zone. But even at that, we can get a lot of times we can winter, and we've wintered fall calf and cow calf pairs. Not generally, but that's what we normally do here. We're in fescue country where there's a whole lot of fall calf and cows for that very reason alone, because of endophyte. And we can winter cows for about 60 to 65 cents a day on standing feed versus harvesting it. Now, there's a couple things you got to give up. You got to give up your tractor and your hay baler, and you got to give up your combine. And that causes most people who farm to have heart palpitations when they do that. I'm very good at breaking equipment, so giving it up, it only took me a couple of years to get over baling hay. But we still do it. But this system, we use it. We're going to use it now, even in our hogs as well as our sheep. And it's a very low maintenance system. It's a really good way to build soil. But you have times that with super cold or super muddy, it don't work well. But nothing works well every time.
Right.
That's just kind of this. But it's very effective. The original idea was to find something that was high quality, high energy feed that stuck up out of a snowbank. And that's where we started at. And we've stayed with it over the years. And Bob is smarter than I did. He has never not done it. I skipped 1 year in there, and I won't ever not do it again. I mean, just kind of, now I know why I'm going to stay doing it for sure.
Right.
And we've been talking, he and I both been talking about promoting it over the years. And finally, Rusty Lee, our extension guy, has gotten involved in it with it. And he started taking to promoting it, and people are setting up and taking notice. And I told him, I said, well, it's about time. It takes 30 years for new technology to get going. I mean, it took 30 years for the internet to get off the ground. Guess we're almost there. So it's about to take off.
No,
it's just,
I appreciate that. Sounds real good. Just some kind of quick back of the envelope math. You're talking $175 to $350 of savings per cow, if my math is right, from feeding hay to the grazing the standing Milo.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of the times the other way we look at it here a little bit, maybe not so much on a per cow basis, we look at it on a per acre basis. When you're right on your cost there, that's dollars per cow. When you look at it as on a per acre basis, if we harvest, sometimes we harvest out strips out of the Milo, so we don't have so much there to have a little bit bigger area when we're grazing. And the cheapest feed that we have, or the Milo that we harvest, is worth basically half of what the Milo is worth left in the field in hay replacement costs. I mean, if Milo is $4 in town, it's worth $8 standing out there for hay replacement. And that's when hay was a lot cheaper than it is the last 2 years. And it's, you can get, when you do it right, if you're approaching 100 bushel Milo, and everybody, we grow the Milo for grain yield on purpose. That's what we do. But, you're talking 400 cow days to the acre, and you can push that when the harvesting conditions are good. So you put whatever number you want to put on that cow day, that's where you are. And it's like, we can't get Milo, we can't get corn to get to those gross dollars.
Yeah.
If you figure it, like, it's kind of like figure it however way you want to figure it. What's it worth or what it costs you? And it's kind of how you want to do it. But it's like, $1,000 an acre on Milo is very, very realistic. It depends on how you want to. When you're arguing with the banker or the accountant, either one of them's like, okay, which way do you want to figure it? Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what it is. I mean, it's serious.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Logan Pribino calls that his black combine when he takes the cows out there to harvest the. Well, I don't know what color your cows are, but.
Yeah, it is. And the animals on a fall calf and cow calf pair, literally, we will put weight on them through the winter. Cow nursing a calf.
Wow.
And what we're trying to get figured out right now is how to figure out the best way to balance that Milo up. Good friend of mine down in Tennessee, LRP Cook, he keeps telling me, Cope, he says, the secret to green is brown and the secret to brown is green. And so what we're trying to do is figure out ways we need some supplemental protein. Milo runs about 9 to 10% protein in the grain, where corn's in that 7 to 8 mark. So even such, you need a little bit more something there, but we're working on a way of getting other things grown in the middle or underneath it. The first time we ever tried it, we planted it as double crop Milo behind wheat and did not realize that we had it perfect the first time. Because we had a lower yield of Milo. We had about 40 to 50 bushel of Milo with no fertilizer, because the wheat isn't really good at scrounging all of its fertilizer. The Milo is. And then you had the double crop, the voluntary wheat coming up underneath it. So we had the green under it. And we had a little bit bigger areas. So there's different ways of doing it, but it's very effective.
I think that and you've mentioned it a couple of times, and I've interacted with some folks from Missouri over the years of doing this podcast that kind of tell me that kind of one of their main challenges is mud season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so is this something that there comes a time when you just have to pull them off and dry lot them until the mud is, subsided and you can get back to grazing the Milo?
Yes, there is. The thing of it is, I don't like to dry lot them, because dry lots here become really deep mud lots. Mm-hmm. Unless you go to the woods and the rocks, and then you're losing all your manure. One of the things that we like to do that really works really, really well with this is we space bale graze big round bales. We set them out, and we'll basically put out bales on like a 50-foot center checkboard pattern. And we'll just basically, you get the same mud lot situation, but basically we move a wire every 2 days and we don't start any equipment. We just move the wire. So basically we're giving them fresh ground every 2 days, and they track it up pretty good. But what we've done in effect is we basically got about a 20-to-1 fertility transfer. We bring about 20 acres worth of hay and set it on 1 acre. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we put that on the worst piece of ground we've got. It's never the worst piece of ground again, because we made a tremendous fertility transfer. The cows, for us, we might muck up 5 acres a year, really bad. But that 5 acres becomes something a whole lot better from then on. And it just, when we get the cows, they get the fresh dirt every 2 weeks, every 2 days, they get new grass. And you have bales sitting out there, and if you got stockpile grass in them, the cows go out there and eat all the grass out between the bales, then they eat the bales. And the calves, they just sneak under a single hot wire.
Yeah.
And so they're always got a place to go. And that's the system I really like to be when the world goes straight in the crapper. Either ice or mud or all that stuff like that. That works out very, very well.
Yeah, I've heard some guys from Missouri, again, probably the same guys, that said that actually bale grazing is what helps them make some of those places where you're dealing with mud all the time. One of the fastest ways to make them more tolerable and less muddy is bale grazing on those areas. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone there.
Yeah, one of the things we're with all these natives that we've got going. We're trying to, our fescues and cool seasons, they're much shallower rooted plants, so they'll pug a lot easier when it gets really, really bad. But we're going to find out what happens when we got a bunch of these really deep rooted natives on that. We do the bale grazing on that, because I think that'll hold the cattle up a lot better. I also think it'll recover a lot quicker. I mean, the recovery period it looks horrible the first spring coming out after. I mean, it looks really, really bad. Grows a great crop of weeds, but makes good forage. And then by the fall, it's amazing how good the grass is again. And, 2 years into it, there's just a few spots around the bale. And the third year, you basically can't tell it. And from then on, you lose some production that first year, but I'm willing to lose 5 acres a year out of 1,000 without a problem and make my life. What I don't want to do in that mud situation is I do not want to start a tractor. We don't use bale rings. One thing we don't do. And people talk about you waste a lot of feed. However, my cow days per bale matches their cow days with rings. And with rings, I've got these cavities around the ring, and I have to fix that. I got tractor ruts. I've got some tractor ruts in a pasture that's almost 50 years old, and they haven't healed up yet. they're still there. Every time I bounce across sideways, they're there. So we don't unroll hay. That's, people talk about unrolling hay, and that you do that, but the biggest thing about this bale grazing system is not the NP and the K, it's the carbon.
Yeah,
you've loaded up that soil with carbon, and it really comes to life. And then it's really simple. That might throw most people off pretty hard, but it's really, really simple, and it works very well.
Right. Yeah. No, the carbon becomes the sponge, right? And that's back to what we were talking about with the bale grazing, fixing that muddy ground. The carbon is the sponge that soaks up that water, increases the water holding capacity, and solves basically everybody's problems in agriculture in America are solved by increased water holding capacity.
It's huge. I mean, it takes, right now, we're in the situation here where we've got really good moisture. If you're a crop farmer, you've got too much moisture. If you're a grass farmer, you're standing around finally looking around going, we got a lot of grass for the first time in 3 years. And it's just, water makes everybody look smart. If you can figure out how to keep what you get, that makes you a much smarter deal. And that's the key for here. I mean, runoff is the big problem that we have. We don't have our water cycle working well. We're a 38-inch rainfall. Last year I had 18 and a half inches. I did not like that. But if we can capture what falls, we're in great shape.
I'm not sure if I'm sure it's just that great minds think alike, but a prominent agricultural cartoonist in our neighborhood just put out a deal the other day that said nothing will make you look like a genius grass manager like 6 inches of rain. And I've been saying that for a long time, that drought will make you feel like an idiot, and rain will make you look like a genius, and neither one is probably true.
That is true. And I remember Stan Parsons saying something a long time ago, and I went to First Ranching for Profit School. He was talking about your grazing management and improving your land and your pastures and your soils. He says, you'll go into a drought and you'll swear you're going backwards. And you might be, he says, but when you come out, what you don't realize is the progressions that you were making with your grazing management kept going. And it comes out, when you come out far better off than you would have. And it just kind of, yeah. Lack of rain has you standing around going, now what do I do?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so can you talk to me a little bit about, and we'll get back to the standing Milo here in a second, but can you talk to me a little bit about some of the keys to success as far as bale grazing is concerned? We did it one of our first years when we took over ownership of this place, and it's good. It's always the darkest, greenest, most abundant forage on the place, more natives there than there is anywhere else, greens up faster, goes dormant later, all of those things, right? I think that maybe we didn't make them clean up enough. Is that a concern in your mind, or does it just take longer for it to get good if you don't make them clean up enough? Kind of talk to me a little bit about your bale grazing strategy.
I look at bale grazing as a way to feed the cows easily in a bad situation, but I look at it as a way to build that soil up real fast. I don't want the cows to clean up the bales really well. I want the litter there because I know what the bottom's going to fall out. And what they walk in, I guess I don't consider hay wasted if it's on the ground where I want it. Now, hay wasted around a ring that I got to clean up the manure and haul it away, that's a waste. Okay? But I don't clean up around rings and I don't haul manure. So I don't look at it as wasted. It's just I'm fertilizing and building. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. My hay cost on a per day cows per bale or per day or whatever is very reasonable. I'm right in there amongst everyone else. So I don't feel like I'm losing. I really think I'm gaining. I've got a brother that feeds most all of his hay around rings, and every spring he has his guys gather up and they start piling up manure in mounds, and then they start hauling manure. I haven't hauled any manure in 25 years.
Yeah, no, it is a diesel intensive industry if you
Yeah.
don't allow the cows to do the work for you.
Yeah. And we still use, I mean, like I said, we shoot for a 30-day stored hay feeding system. But this time was the first time I've done this in a very long time. I had a fellow bale 300 bales of wet bales for me, but I've also got 60 head of custom grass finishers that I wanted to make sure I had enough quality feed to get them done into the winter. So I spent money there, but we're also got another experiment going right behind there where those bales were cut off too. So we're trying to develop other things in there.
Yep, for sure. So back to the standing Milo. What's your strategy to make this work? I mean, talk me through the year in getting ready for it. How do you pick the place where you're going to do it? And some of those things.
You said the last thing first that was most important, picking the place. Okay. For me, I've got one particular 40 here that I'm working with, and I've grazed it quite a few times. And I feel really bad when I'm out there because there's no protection for those cows from nowhere between there and the North Pole but a barbed wire fence. And it's like, that's ugly. So we're in the process of growing switchgrass windbreaks around it. So, if they're 6 feet tall, that's all a cow needs for a windbreak. And then, you want to grow it where the whole process is just, you're a Milo farmer. You're a grain farmer growing this product. And that you're trying to grow as much grain as you reasonably can. And then if you get past that 100 bushel Milo thing, you're down to the point of where you probably need to harvest some strips out of it so that your cows aren't concentrated so tight in such a small area per day. The goal is to feed between 8 and 10 pounds of grain per cow per day. The thumbnail version of it that we do is when we're grazing it, we want the heads to be gone in 30 minutes and most of it all to be gone in 2 hours. That's about how fast it is. I mean, it goes pretty quick. And the ideal part of it is if the field is muddy, the guy's got to be able to let the cows get a place to go to get off the mud. I mean, it's just like having cows in a mud lot. They got to have a place. You're either going to bed someplace, you got to find something. Because it's just like you wouldn't want to sit down out there on the bed if it was you, that kind of thing. But it's the goal is to grow it where you especially maybe you have some winter protection. Make sure you try to grow it where you got good winter water. That's the other, feed and water and some protection, and then you're pretty good shape. If you got the choice when you're grazing it, try to graze from the southeast corner to the northwest corner. The reason being is you're going into the winter winds. And believe it or not, if Milo's 3.5, 4 feet tall, cows will lay down right next to that wire and the wind will shoot right over the back. Mm-hmm. It's somewhat of a windbreak for them that way if you do things like that. And if you can try to go uphill, that's just a couple things. You'd be far better off if you thought you needed 40 acres of Milo to have 4 tens. Because you'll find yourself going from one side to the other side of a 40, and it's a long ways across there in the mud.
Sure.
You're better off. But if you try to go to too small of fields, you have one other magical problem. You guys have deer?
Yep.
You'll have a lot more. Because you're the only guy with feed left in the winter.
Yep. They
will come see you. So you have to make an allowance for that being lost. But from the wildlife side of things, we graze off a field of Milo. When we get to the end of the field, when the cows go into the last paddock, the quail go out. They're in there. They've got feed. The wildlife got cover. If you're in country and pheasants, they'd be all over the place.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, it has that benefit to it too.
Yep.
I mean, standing whole Milo that you don't harvest the plant, once you get past about the middle of February, it has a tendency to start to fall down because Milo in 15th of February, you can take a pair of pliers and squeeze a stalk. If it's not frozen, juice will run out. Unlike a corn stalk. If you've been around, anybody's ever bales Milo stalks for fodder or feed, they got to cut them and dry them. I tried it one time, just direct harvest them, making fodder, storing them. that pile of stalks literally melted the whole winter. It was 140 degrees the second day. I was glad I didn't have it in the barn. I had it near it. I was afraid it was going to burn the barn down. But that Milo has the difference between Milo and corn is very simply Milo is killed. It's green when it freezes. Corn matures and dies.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're in the Milo's, like Milo leaves. That's why people graze Milo stalks. The leaves are much higher quality. The leaves are like 10% protein in February. The only thing wrong with Milo is that it itches. Other than that, corn wouldn't have a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got so many positive attributes. It's not even funny in this situation. And I've tried grazing corn like the Milo. Doesn't work near as well. Just doesn't work.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Farming Without the Bank. None of you are farming like you did 100 years ago. Why are you financing it like you did 100 years ago? The biggest part of your operation is the money that runs through your hands, and you let someone else control that. The bank gets the final say in what you get money for and when you pay it back. For many, this is a great relationship, until it's not. Farming Without the Bank shows you how you can take back the control of your money so that you can make the bank plan B instead of plan A. This is done by you creating your own banking system you own and control. To learn more, tune in to the Farming Without the Bank podcast and go to farmingwithoutthebank.com to get the book. Once you've read the book, Mary Jo will meet with you one-on-one and help you determine where and how to get started. She'll most likely also touch on some estate transition ideas, financing ideas, business growth or startup ideas, and many other things she has experience with from helping thousands of farmers and ranchers like you. So go to farmingwithoutthebank.com today to get the book and subscribe to the Farming Without the Bank podcast now. So you've picked your place. You've talked about winter water protection, or at least strategy in the direction you work the field. How do you prepare the place for planting? Are you going to be planting into grass that's been sprayed out or something like that? Or how are you getting ready to plant and some of those things?
Ideally, you would want to no-till it into something that was pretty solid. We've worked the ground for years and planted into it. It's just muddier quicker. Okay. If you could, just depends on whatever you got to work with. I think one thing, I don't know if you guys grow much red clover up in your part of the world or not, but I think it's something that's got a tremendous potential here. And that's one of the things we're working into using is the fact that we could use that clover as our hay crop that we need and then plant our Milo right back into it. And we're looking at doing it in such a way that we don't kill the clover between the row mills. I think we'll see how it goes as the years go by here. Next couple of years, we're going to get this thing kind of figured out. But I think we can pretty well grow this Milo in that situation, almost in a perennial stand of red clover, and just keep moving over every year. A friend of mine he found on the Sorghum Checkoff website, he'd found where twin row Milo on 60-inch centers out yielded 30-inch Milo. So if a guy's got a 60-inch set of Milo rows and you can grow clover in the middles, every year you just move over a little bit. I think you can run, if you're growing Milo on 3-year-old clover that you killed, I don't think you're going to need any nitrogen. And if we're not removing anything else, this turns into a pretty low input system that I think will keep just cooking right along. I can't prove it yet. It's in 3 years.
I will do that. Or you let me know. I'd love to get the update.
Just come back to Missouri sometime. Then Clay will show you it's easier that way.
I got friends in Missouri. I need to come sometime. My wife told me that my day job is I'm a pastor of a church here in western South Dakota, and my wife told me the other day, so you need to take a sabbatical, like September, October, November, some year, and just go travel to all these places of these people who've invited you over the years. And that sounded like a pretty good idea to me.
I'd say you got a heck of an idea, bud.
So, and she was like, we could go to Canada. I'm like, I'm thinking south. We're going to go.
Go south in the wet fall. Go to Canada in the spring or summer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So,
unless you know people up there that got a lot of snowmobiles and they need help riding them. So
yeah.
just go. Winters, they tell me winter's a lot of fun when you're not working in it.
Yeah.
I have not really experienced that yet.
Yeah, my dad worked for the phone company for 35, 40 years, and he still won't allow any artwork that has scenes of winter in it in the house.
Yeah, because he spent his whole life freezing in it.
Yeah,
yes.
He was forced to work in it. So he said, I don't want to look at it when I'm inside.
Well, you talk about winter like that, Clay. Let me tell you what the labor requirements is on doing this. It takes you about 20 to 30 minutes to move a wire. If it's 20 cows or if it's 300.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you got the rest of the day to go back home and do your taxes that you're supposed to have done. If from the work requirement of it, it's one of those, even like with our sheep. I mean, we got dry ewes, that window of time. It's kind of like you drive by and look at them and say, oh, they're fine. I'll see you all tomorrow. We don't even bother looking any closer than that.
Yep.
You have to grate on the Milo with the cows. You need to move the wire every day. With the sheep, you can very well get along with about a week.
Huh.
They won't overeat nearly like the cows will. And they'll do. Sheep understand they're the prey species, so they work from the outside edges in. Cows in the Milo field, they can see each other. They'll walk all over that thing. Sure. But they'll stomp a lot more down. But you're part of the world that the mud trampling loss is a much shorter defined window in the spring. Ours can be anywhere from 1st of November till the 1st of April. Mm-hmm. Just, it can happen to us whenever it happens.
Yep. Yep. And you're talking about loss of livestock, right? In the mud, like young livestock, or just
basically when it gets really muddy, you literally have to pay attention to how long it's taking your animals to eat and see and come to the conclusion as to how much they're planting, walking in.
I see.
And increase the allocation accordingly.
Yep.
So it's like you would be, when we hit the 2 weeks, when the bottom falls out, if we're still grazing Milo, we will double our allocations and maybe more than that because, depends on how fast they put her in the ground. Everything they step on disappears. Yep. If it's frozen ground, they step on it, it's right there. They'll pick it back up. That is that's a challenge. You got to be ready for it.
Yep. So we talked a little bit about the strategies of, you mentioned, I think, moving regularly, moving frequently. What are some of the other strategies? You talked about the direction you're moving across the fields, some of those things, how you pick the places. Anything else that comes to mind as far as things that really make this work?
We get ice. Ice is a trick. When you get ice, you're headed for that field first thing in the morning with 2 fence posts, flat fiberglass fence posts. You just slip them over the wall and give them a quarter turn twist, and you just walk and just buzz all the ice right off because you'll be out there and your fences will be, here's the post, and it'll be down laying on the ground in between them. And that's the beauty of an electric fence. Those cows pretty well stand there and look at you and wait for you to get the ice off of it, and then you move it. That ice is the biggest challenge. You knock that off, and it's the pain. Beyond that, I thought I had a thought there, but I was going to say, but that is your challenge. Is ice is it? In heavy wet snows, it'll put things down. But and then we've gotten so far. This is a part where I got over about being a purist when it got down to 0 and sub-zero, which it does here, believe it or not. And if your ground is open and bare, you find yourself out there with a cordless drill and concrete bit to drill a hole so you can put your posts in. The one thing I would sure suggest to you, do not, and I don't mean maybe, do not use a steel post because they freeze in and stay frozen. And then anything gets off that you can, you got an instant ground. And so you want to be pretty economical. We like those Gates cord wheels, the plastic cord wheels, those $6 cord wheels. That's what we put our polywire on. We don't go out there with a good $60 spool. We do not work fences hot. I've been knocked down, ain't doing that. And we turn off the fences. We go move the cows, and one major rule very important rule is never leave the field without having the next day's break set up. You better be sick or dying. Beyond that, because if you go out with the fences off, the next day the cow's following you up and down the wrong side of the fence, and pretty soon somebody's in there grazing.
Yeah.
And when it happens, and it'll happen sooner or later, that the cattle wind up in the Milo, sit down and think about it for 30 minutes. Let them eat. Then when they're full, you can get them right back out. If you try to get them out while they're eating, you're going to run down 2 weeks worth of feed. Just let them eat, then take them back out.
Yeah.
It gives you enough time to calm down, quit cussing, and call the neighbors come help you.
Yeah, for sure. What are the risks? Are there anything that comes to mind or issues that you've had doing this that people should know about before they jump in?
There's always the prussic acid issue at freeze. Okay. Everybody says, be careful about it. I'll say, be careful about it. Don't know if anybody's really ever lost anything, but if somebody does lose something, it's a complete disaster. I mean, you count feet and divide by 4 to figure out how many animals you used to have. But that's the issue. You can graze. That's one nice thing about Milo is grazing wise. You don't have to wait till winter. You can start grazing on any time. So if you can start grazing before frost in the green and graze right up to it, but when it freezes, you got to come away. You got about a week. You need to get out of there. Okay. Beyond that, once she freezes and your browns are up good, roll on.
Yeah. And so that's a one-time deal. Is it freezes once, get off for a week, and then you can go back once it's brown.
Yeah. And then in severe drought conditions, you got nitrate problems. Thing of it is it's one of those, don't get ignorant with the nitrogen. Try to keep it a little bit towards the lighter end of the situations. And if, as far as the nitrate poisoning is, if the cow has a choice, she won't eat that.
Yeah.
You force her to eat it. People want to make the cows eat all of it. Wrong choice. It's kind of like, well, the combine only takes the grain. Why do you expect the cow to eat all of it? Because you get to the bottom portion of the stalk, they'll take what they want within reason. Try not to be, you're making a lot of money here. Don't get greedy.
Yeah.
That's
and
the blunt out of it.
Right. Back to the carbon issue, leaving something behind is good anyways, right?
Yes. Everything they put on the ground is not wasted. You're feeding the soil. You got to feed the soil to get the crop. And we've all been taught that I borrowed this one from somebody somewhere. There's a difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency means you're doing things right. Effective means you're doing the right thing. Those two things are not exactly, oftentimes they're exclusive of one another. You can be very efficient at doing the wrong thing and you're still in a whole lot of trouble. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. So you've mentioned a few times experimentation, talked about the clover, talked about other things. What are some things that you've learned over the years that you think are keys to this being successful?
We do our best to try to eliminate as much equipment as we can out of the program. We don't get it out. I mean, I wear out four-wheelers. When you don't want to buy a four-wheeler I've ever owned. But I mean, those things we use a lot. We try to avoid the larger diesel fuel situations if we can, especially in the livestock. I've been told this more than once, every time, Jim Garrish is famous for this saying. He says, every time you put a machine between the mouth of an animal's food supply, there's no way you're going to win. You think you are, but you're really not. You can move it around some, but just if you make that a routine move, don't do that. And you try to get figure out what things are costing. I'm not a great economist, but when I can do 60 cents a day for a cow calf pair versus $2, I think I can do that.
Yeah,
that's what we do
for sure. Any past experiments like the clover one now that have become the norm? These are the things we continue to do.
This Milo is the one experiment. The first time we ever did that, people thought I'd lost my ever-loving mind, and we've since kept on going with it. But we're just trying to perfect it and help it. We've the thing that we've done on the experimenting side for us in this part of the world is we've planted a lot of native grasses, taken out a lot of I've taken out some very good cool season pastures and replaced them with a very diverse native mixture that has native cool seasons in it. And just for the productivity, it's kind of like right now, the fescue's all seeded out, headed and starting to brown up a little bit. The natives are they're taller than they're all green, and it's just lush and it's tremendous. I mean, and it only took me 25 years to realize it, because they were growing on the side of the road. And I was like, why don't they have them on the other side of the fence? And so we went to putting them over there. And we started off doing it the same way with the monocultures of the natives, and they were tremendous even at that. And we're down to the point now that I basically, even in the Milo, I'm trying to figure out how to not plant a monoculture. The only reason I got for a monoculture is to harvest seed from it, and then I still want to figure out how to grow something else with it.
Right. Yep.
And so that's, we talk about all the time about, all these different, we need all these different plants on top, so we get all these different root exudates in the soil and all the biology and everything else. It's like, and we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we come up with different animal combinations too? We got all this diversity everywhere but the animals.
Yep.
Maybe we're making a slight effort here. That might be a problem.
Yeah. I've been working with understanding ag more and more closely over the last couple of years, and that the diversity comes up in all three of their key principles: the 6, the 3, and the 4. Right, the 6 principles of soil health, the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship, and the 4 ecosystem processes. All 3 of those have diversity in them as one of the key principles, and so it becomes more and more important as we continue to examine, what's going on in our systems and making sure that they are as resilient and regenerative as possible.
Yeah, it's all about, and I know several of the folks with understanding ag and get along with all of them except Eric Fuchs. I like to fight with him all the time anyway. We're friends besides that point. But it just, the natural model is that's kind of how we describe what we do to the people that we market to a lot of times. It's like, we try to keep it as close to the natural model as we can. And if there's things that we can fix, it's kind of like the soil fertility. We're trying to go to a much better job of balancing our soils and certain things that we need. And some of them, if you were an organic operation, they won't let you do it. It's like, if I need it and they won't let me do it, and so we're not an organic operation. We just try to be as natural about it as we can, but we're still in business to make money and do well and keep this thing going long term.
Yeah, for sure. So what's this area where you're going to feed standing Milo? What is it like the rest of the year? How is it getting utilized? Is it part of the regular rotation? Is there some way that it's specially taken care of to prepare it to be used like that in the winter?
Sometimes it's part of a regular cropping rotation. Instead of corn, it'd be soybeans. We don't do hardly any of that. Mostly it'd be wheat and forages and things like that. We do almost no row cropping, just as close to zero as I can get away with it. But we will grow cover crops. We'll try to grow forages, other things after that, to try to get some nitrogen in the soil beforehand. That's the point where this idea of basically creating perennial stands of red clover and keeping them in there is coming to the front of this deal. And I got a friend that's what his family used to do. They kept 40 acres in red clover all the time. They would plant triticale in the fall, chop that off in the spring, turn right around and plant Sudex into that, chop that off in the fall. And his point was, he says that we just kept chopping it. And he said, if you had a really bad year, you didn't have one or the other, you still had the red clover. And the clover just balanced up both of those really well. And it's a nitrogen source. And clover is a pioneer species. It's not so it's used to that disturbance. You've seen it where you trample pastures badly. You get the clovers, they just jump all over you. I mean, they comes off that disturbance. And so that's part of it also is to figure out what else we can slip into there to make this work. And the intention is to basically, we've only got about 150 acres of really decent tillable cropland out of 1,300 acres of woods and pasture. But that if I want to keep that tillable cropland in that clover rotation, and probably with grazing of the Milo, and then we'll probably work in oats and vetch or white proso millet is the suggestions I've gotten given to me for the summertime window previous to, if basically have half of it Milo and the other half of it in the vetch and the millet and roll them around.
Yep.
Is what we're talking about doing.
Sure. It sounds like a great system. You mentioned one other thing I'd like to talk about, and then we're going to capture some bonus content afterwards if you got some time, talking about your direct marketing operation. But the other thing that you mentioned, I don't want to miss, it was actually mentioned in the original email where you were suggested as a guest, was you were talking about planting native species, replanting native species. What's been the key to success there? What have you learned about how to make that work?
We've learned a lot of different things over the years. We're kind of getting a system ironed down, and it's not my system. I've worked with Jordan Bashir's the MDC and Gatlin Bunton with Ewing's First Extension, and both those guys know quite a bit about the natives. And so we've kind of putting together a program to where the goal of it is to be able to get natives established and only have 1 year out of production. And we're thinking we might have come across an idea perhaps where we can even take that out. It's the idea of planting these natives into standing wheat in early spring, February. Then take the wheat off as a grain crop, allow the natives to come on and grow through the summer, and into the fall, the next spring, we're pretty well set to go. It's a weed control program, and it gives us a cash crop off of it the first year. If we can figure out how to establish natives with a cash crop or an income off of them other than the FSA and NRCS programs, we've got something. And I think we can get it to happen pretty quick. We're still in the process of, I got 100 on most all this cropland I've got. I got most of it underseeded to switchgrass this time with that very plan in mind. And like I said, see me in 3 years, Clay. I'll tell you how it worked.
Sounds good. Appreciate that. Yeah. Anything else that you want to say here? Any other, advice that you'd give to somebody who was thinking about trying to start feeding some standing Milo through the winter?
I would say don't go nuts the first year, but also go nuts enough to make sure you got enough to make it worth your time. And, the 400 cow days, don't count on that. Count on 150 to 120, 150 to maybe 200. That's very realistic. And you got more, tremendous. Get more, you do well. But give it pretend you're a grain farmer. You're after growing grain. Don't bet the world on it, but you will be extremely surprised. Rusty worked with a gentleman down southwest corner of the state. This boy planted 120 acres of Milo. He grazed it off with his cows this winter. He figured he put about $100,000 in his pocket that he didn't spend. That he did not spend.
Mm-hmm.
It was that worth. He was tickled to death, which is set yourself up to make it work and succeed the first time, and then you'll stay with it.
Do you have any mechanisms for judging how much is there?
Yes, there's a very good system for judging how much is there. It took us a long time to figure it out. Go down there, a 30-inch row of Milo, 17 feet, 5 inches, not 6, is 1/1000th of a row, or of an acre. I'm sorry. But go down there and cut off all those heads just below the berries. Weigh them.
Huh.
Take that times like 73%, and that's the grain yield.
Huh.
And if we tried all the brushing it out, the rubbing it out, beating it on everything else, and finally we figured out one time after we did all that, we weighed it before and after, and we found that 73%. And it's like, okay, we're done with all that stuff. You can just take a bucket and a scale, go out through there and just cut off, weigh the bucket this much, throw it over in a pile, do about 5 or 6 of those. You can yield check a field in about 30 minutes. Pretty darn accurate. The other thing is, if you got too much Milo out there, you combine strips out of there, then you do know exactly what it is.
Right.
Because you know how far the combine went.
Yep. Very good. Oh, Harry, I really appreciate your time today. As I said, I'd like to capture a little bonus content on your direct marketing operation if you got about 10 more minutes. But other than that, I'll let you go for this portion of the conversation.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Very good stuff there with Harry. Really appreciate the way he thinks about experimentation within his operation. As he said, multiple times throughout that conversation, ask me in 3 years. So he's still learning. He's still implementing new practices, still really implementing new practices from a real evidence-based approach of determining whether or not this works and being willing to quit things that don't. So really, really cool conversation there. Really appreciate Harry taking the time to join me today on the Working Cows podcast. Very excited to be joined next week on the Working Cows podcast by Dallas Mount. Dallas, of course, is the CEO of Ranch Management Consultants, and he's been in that role for a few years now, and I wanted to talk to him about some of the things that have been vital for him in terms of language that has been helpful in the way that they think about just the day in, day out business management of running that business. I mean, Dallas, even before he took over Ranch Management Consultants, had been telling ranchers to run their ranches like a business. It's a business. You should run it like one. And those things. Well, now Dallas has been in the driver's seat of a business for a few years, and some of these concepts, I'm sure, have taken on new meaning to him. And so I want to talk to him about some of these ideas like daily burn rate and debt coverage ratio and some of those things about how he's been using them to help him make decisions on a day in and day out basis. Also wanted to let you know that I will be a guest on the Profitable Stewardship webinar podcast this coming Thursday night, June 27th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Mountain time. You can do the math on the other time zones. But I'll be talking with Jared Sorensen about what it means to be an agricultural entrepreneur, what it means to be a ranching entrepreneur, and how we can go about creating multiple streams of income and diversity in our businesses to create resilience and some of those things. So some of these things I've been thinking about for a long time, and really looking forward to discussing them with Jared on the Profitable Stewardship webinar. We'll see you there, and we'll see you again real soon with another episode of the Working Cows podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.